Welcome to another short update from Aquarius Farms. Today we're going to cover a little better example of a bed that's filling out. The one that we covered yesterday was one of the later plantings, and so it's a little bit behind. So again, we've kind of followed sort of a pattern. The end of the beds with the most sun exposure gets the tomatillos with the squash around the bottom. Over here you can see that we've got some summer savory interplanted. And then you'll see a bunch of weeds here, right? And we really don't consider weeds, and although this is cilantro right here, which looks scarily like this weed, and it makes it difficult, we don't really spend a lot of effort compared to most gardens weeding until, like you'd see with this particular weed right here, it gets to the point where it's beginning to interfere with the plant, right? And then we'll start taking that weed out. But you know, when you're going organic, there's just so many weeds, because when you grow vegetables well, you also, as a byproduct, grow weeds really well. That really, it would be a never-ending task, and in our opinion is somewhat counterproductive, because some of those weeds, again, can be beneficial in controlling insect populations and whatnot. But it just doesn't seem to be much point in spending a lot of effort weeding if the weed is not interfering or doesn't appear to be interfering with the growth of the plant. So, you know, that's pretty much all we do for a weeding. Just clean out the center of the plant, get a little more sun exposure to the fruit, and then do it again the next time it gets fluffy, as my wife says. So down here we have a sea of, well, I'd say greens, and they really are, but this is a red leaf lettuce. And if, as you can see, this is quite literally, it's a big, healthy, I mean, you really got to dig into there it's a challenge to even see the dirt, really. I mean, it's literally a carpet of lettuce. And here within the next 2 days, we will start aggressively harvesting microgreens. Within about 2 weeks, we'll start aggressively harvesting baby greens. And then what we'll be left with is the proper adult plant spacing so that we can harvest a mature head of lettuce. Now, we also do lettuce a little differently than most people. To try and keep the quality of our product sort of a notch above most, we actually continuously plant lettuce, and then we harvest it by pulling it out by its roots once it gets to the baby green or better size. When we rinse the roots off and when we sell it to our customers, we let them know that if you take those roots, set them in a shallow bowl of cool water and put them inside your refrigerator, they'll last approximately 2 weeks, which is much, much longer than you typically get out of a bag of baby greens from the grocery store. Or at least that's been our experience for our own vegetable consumption habits. You see, again, we've got a bit of a pattern going. We have squashes with a big sort of alternating row of different kinds of herbs, some cilantro, I believe that's Genovese basil all the way to the end, some tomatoes in between the squashes, and then as they grow up taller, the squashes will serve as a bit of a living mulch for everything else. Now, one other thing we do when we prune our tomatoes, and I think we've got one that I just freshly pruned over here, you know, is they grow so incredibly fast that we end up having to take big cuts, as you can see, into some pretty substantial sized suckers, because it'll grow a 6-inch sucker in the course of 3 or 4 days, which can be, to put it mildly, kind of frustrating to deal with over the long term. And so what we do when we make an aggressive cut like that is we come back and immediately douse, and you'll see our sprayer right here, douse it in fresh aerated compost tea, which is basically almost akin to a brewing mash of beneficial aerobic bacteria that are similar to affecting a plant as the probiotics in your gut are for a human, in that they help you digest and process your food. They also help digest the soil, and then that in turn release minerals, nutrients, all of the things that the plant needs in a soluble form that's healthy for them. So we don't fertilize so much as we feed the soil, and then the soil feeds the plants. And we do that by benefiting or trying to boost the activity in what they call the soil food web. And aerated compost tea is a big part of how we accomplish that. It's very beneficial in that those beneficial microorganisms will colonize plant sites or infection sites on the plant and outcompete the bad pathogens that you don't want. Another benefit of compost tea is there's some research showing that if you run aeration on compost tea, any pathogens that can be harmful to humans, which 95% plus of them are anaerobic, or in other words, they don't like oxygen-rich conditions, will be outcompeted by the beneficial aerobic microorganisms, and it generally will drop the levels of those harmful organisms well down below detectable levels and far below acceptable food safety standards. So it's a really good way of ensuring that you're not bringing contamination into your fertilization, which is a real risk when you're growing organically, because you're really depending on those bacteria to do the job for you. So, you know, if you've sort of forgotten to turn your pile once or twice and the temperature has gotten too high and it's killed off all those aerobic microorganisms, you're going to sterilize that stuff out when you make compost tea. Also, another thing about compost tea is you don't really even need compost to make it, because what you're trying to do is breed bacteria, nematodes, and other sorts of beneficial microorganisms that let your plants properly digest and absorb the nutrients that are already present in the soil. Right? So this is a very beneficial thing that we do, and we're a big believer in the use of aerated compost tea, both for the reasons of food safety and the health of a plant. You basically can brew this stuff with this, you know, a spade full of healthy dirt, some molasses, comfrey, thistle, and there's a few other ingredients we throw in there. I'd be happy to share if you'd like to contact us via our Facebook page. So again, this is another episode of Aquarius Farms. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.